Predict, pick, and prevail in your fantasy football leagues with Nick Giacobbe and Nick Cap. From breakouts to busts, superstars to sleepers, these are the guys that will help you achieve fantasy glory. This is the PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast.
Welcome everybody to Season 2, Episode 79 of the PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast, where we give you our predictions, our picks, with the hopes that we hope you prevail for Week 18, your fantasy championship, and the rest of the 2022 fantasy football season. I guess that is the rest. That's it. I am your host, Nick Giacobbe. Joining me is Nick Cap. Nick, we're going into Week 18. Me and you have nothing to play for. My team has a chance at a playoff spot. I also saw a wild scenario where your team could have a slight chance at a playoff spot, but for fantasy purposes, me and you don't have anything to play for because we're not psychos that play into Week 18. But for you guys out there that do, we're here to help you out, and that's hopefully what we could do in this episode.
Unfortunately, my team has no shot at sneaking in the playoffs. But
no, I saw a scenario where I believe they would expand the playoffs just in the AFC to 8 teams.
Why?
Because they're not playing the Bills and the Bengals game.
That has no playoff implications for those guys. You know what? Let's go for it, and let's go beat those Dolphins.
I think the Brownies would also have a shot at the playoffs, too.
That would be miserable.
I love the Brownies. Imagine the Brownies snuck in and won the Super Bowl with Deshaun Watson. That'd be awesome.
No, it would not be awesome. That'd be terrible.
It would, because then you're showing up to the PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast with a good old Browns jersey.
Oh, God.
Yep.
Oh, God.
That'd be awesome. All right. Alrighty, guys. So if you've been checking in with us throughout the entire season, we thank you for that. Whether it's the shows during the week, whether it's the live shows, we will be live this Sunday. I'll be live, at least Nick's as a scheduling conflict. So I'll be live for a Week 18 live show, our final one of the 2022 NFL season. I'll be getting you guys ready for Week 18, answering any questions that you have that morning. I don't know how many questions I'll honestly have, so I don't know how many of you guys are playing into Week 18. So I don't know how long the show is going to be, honestly. Normally it'd go an hour. This one might go 15 minutes. It might go 30 minutes. I'll be there talking about the games at least. And, you guys can come chat with me. You could ask any questions that you have. If you have any questions, football questions, you could ask me. If any questions about, if you're doing fantasy playoffs and stuff like that, I can answer that kind of stuff too. Going forward, we're going to do one episode a week in the off season. Some of them may be shorter than others. We'll talk about NFL news, fantasy news. But we're going to keep doing fantasy content in the off season. So starting next week, we're going to give you our bracket for the NFL playoffs, who we think is going to advance. And then we'll also talk about fantasy playoff formats, whether you do it on like NFL.com or if you do like a best ball league or something. There's a couple different formats you could do, but if you play NFL playoff fantasy, I guess it's called, we're going to do a show on that. You're speaking to a champion of an NFL playoff league last year, actually. I sincerely lucked out in fantasy football last year, but I did end up winning my league last year, which is pretty cool. So we'll see what happens this year. It'll be a lot of fun. But anyway, that will be our show for next week. We'll probably drop it on Tuesday and record on Monday for you guys that are drafting early. So that'll be a lot of fun. With that said, you can find us on all audio streaming platforms, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Anchor. If you're on iTunes or Spotify, please give us a 5-star rating and a review. If you'd rather watch and listen to the show, go to our YouTube channel, PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. We're over 130 subscribers, went up almost 100 on the season, so thank you so much. Make sure you like this video if you're watching it. Any video that you watch in the future, make sure you drop a like on those as well. Then your leagues are over and you don't want to give people a competitive advantage. How about you share the love of the PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast, share the links out, let them know how you won your league by listening to us, hopefully, and help grow that PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast in the off season. Keep connecting with us on social media, PrimeTimeFFPod on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram. We promise we're going to fire up the TikTok in the off season. Nick's going to teach me TikTok. We have a lot of months to do it, especially during like July and August when there's just baseball on. So instead of watching the Yankees, I'll do TikTok. So there we go. And then Facebook and YouTube is PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast. Starting off some injury updates and some news. We're just going to start off the show with this. So first off, I do want to extend our prayers and well wishes to Damar Hamlin, who unfortunately got injured on Monday night. It's a scary situation and a situation that I haven't seen, Nick hasn't seen, and probably any football fan hasn't seen. It's unheard of. it's uncharted territories, both for NFL, for fantasy football, for everything. So first, want to extend our thoughts to him, his family. I think it's awesome that he was able to open up his eyes last night and he's able to communicate. I think it's really fucking awesome. He's a football guy, and he asked the doctors who won the football game. The response that I saw on Twitter was they said, "You won life," or something like that. And that sounds like a cheesy movie line, but anyway, the football game did not happen, obviously. And that's kind of what we want to talk about because it's a fantasy football show. Not the thought process of if the game should have been played, should not been played. I personally think that the game probably could have been rescheduled at some point, but they didn't want to, move around all the pieces. But I think it's a shame that's not going to get rescheduled just for the fact that it's has implications on, seeding in the playoffs. And I still don't know how they're going to handle it. I haven't given the teams a tie. So I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do. But
so I think the report was that it's leaning towards not playing, and the seeding will be based off winning percentage, which means for a fifth straight season, it will be the Kansas City Invitational.
Why would they have a higher winning percentage than Buffalo, though? Did they have one less?
They have one more win because of this week, because they did not play the game. But then even if they gave them a tie, they would not take the tiebreaker.
Yeah, I don't know. It's tough.
But that's what it looks like, the situation.
Yeah, so I don't know. But that's not the fantasy portion. Here's the fantasy portion. Obviously, Week 17 was championship week for most people again, besides the psychos that play Week 18. And I'm sorry if I offend any of you, but guys, Week 18, tell your leagues not to do it. Please, it's bad. The starting quarterbacks this week are Nathan Peterman, Sam Ellinger, and Sam Howell, and David Blow. So yeah, let's not do fantasy in Week 18. But so fantasy championships relied on this game. On one, you had two top 5 quarterbacks. You had two top 5 receivers. You had a top probably 12, 15 running back. T. Higgins is a top 12 receiver as well. Gabriel Davis has a chance to boom any possible week. You had 2 tight ends. You had kickers. So there's a good chance you went into Monday night down 2 points with Evan McPherson and thought you had a really solid chance and lost. So the question going around is, how do we handle this? Specifically for league managers, commissioners, etc. And Nick, I don't know. I don't think you're a commissioner of any league, at least, but I want to get your thoughts as if you were a manager, how do you handle, hypothetically, let's say it's me and your brother in the championship, and let's say I was up, 2 points, and he had Jamar Chase, and Chase had his goose egg. Let's say the payout's $1,000. How do you handle it as a commissioner?
So I am a commissioner in a league.
Okay, I did not know that. So there you go. How would I ask? How did you handle it then? Did this matchup affect the championship?
It did affect the championship.
Okay, let's hear it.
I will pull up the game, but I will say now the 2 league managers, I left it up to them to decide what they wanted to do. And they did agree to just split the winnings because it was a close game. It was going to come down to it would have came down to that matchup. So it was Evan McPherson. The team A was up 5 with Evan McPherson. Team B had T. Higgins only. So Higgins probably pulls out the win for that guy, but of course, you never know what's going to happen if they did reschedule the game. So, according to ESPN's guidelines on games that are suspended or postponed, and this I think this is also true in Yahoo. If the game is rescheduled 7 days after 7 days or later after when the game was originally supposed to be held, the game is suspended. The fantasy playoff, those players are void for that matchup, so they do not count no matter what.
Define no matter what, even if
they play 2 weeks later, then it's 0 points. Let's say it was week 5 and they played in week 7 instead, that was where the replacement was made. Those fantasy points do not affect week 5's playoff games. They affect week 7. So I think it's very weird and interesting how I think ESPN.
What do you mean exactly? So, like if Joe Burrow had 10 points, you're saying they get wiped away?
Yes.
So
That's what's going to happen on the 7th day in ESPN and Yahoo. So if payouts were made, there are going to be some fantasy results that do flip because of this. I do think it's interesting what has happened. I think splitting is fair. I mean, if like there's an 80-point difference and somebody has one player, it's a different story. I think the commissioner's got to make the right decision. I think if it's close, you split. I think if it's too far off and it was apparent who's going to be the winner, you just need the guy that was going to lose to concede.
yeah.
I think most rational fantasy football players and human beings would understand and accept their second prize.
So I'll tell you what I did. First, I'll tell you what I did in our league, Nick. So our championship did not get affected. Our championship in our league was decided as of Sunday night. Congratulations to our pal Jared. Third championship in our league. Only person to win more than one. Phenomenal. I mean, between me, Jared, and our other buddy Palmer. I mean, we've been playing hot potato with the points, the championships. Through the last few years. So they were not affected. And anybody that's won a league that we were in, you're welcome to come on the show, by the way. We'll be texting you about that. So I texted our two players that were playing for our points title. And this is something that I'm going to recommend to every fantasy listener to us next year is you should contact your league manager and say, if you have payouts in your league, you should get you should get a payout for having the most points throughout the season. I personally have done it in our league for basically the entirety of our league, and I think it's something that kind of needs to happen because if you score the most points, you had the best team, and that's kind of how it should go. So we had two players battling for the points, and one was up 200.48. That was his final score. Had nobody playing Monday night. So 200.48 going up to about 61. So the other player needed 100. And so the other player didn't need to win the matchup. He needed to secure his points title. He was up 30 going into the week. So he needed to score about 110 points to secure his points title. He had going on Monday night, Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, Jamar Chase, Dawson Knox, and Tyler Bass. 110 points is very, very doable. 40 from Allen, 40 from the receivers. That's 80 right there.
This is also a bonus league.
This is super bonus league. So like Mike Evans, for example, I'm going to tell you what Mike Evans scored in this league.
In normal PPR, he put up 46, I want to say.
Okay, so Mike Evans' normal last week was 46. He had 59 in our league. So point being, it was a hefty number, but yes, he could have gotten it. So on Monday, I texted these two guys, and I know them. I knew they were probably going to handle this, with grace and stuff. And I said, gentlemen, this is kind of the situation. Here are my options as commissioner. My first one was you guys split the points pot. Second one was that the person that was down I said you could in week 18 you could play any quarterback, any two receivers, any tight end, any kicker, and those points will replace the points that would have been gotten by your players in week 17. And then I said you could wait until the decision of Cincinnati and Buffalo, and they decided to wait. So then I texted them today and said, here's the situation. What would you guys like to do? And they said that they would like to split it if that was okay. The person that actually was down all those points said I would like him to get a little bit more of the money because I probably would not have came back even if it was possible. So, I like the guys in our league a lot. I think they're all stand-up guys, and I think they handled this very well. And I even said in that chat, I said, the person that was up 200, I said, hey, just to be clear, you basically won technically because it's almost treated as if it's treated almost as if Jamar Chase went out and broke his ACL in the first snap, which happens. You don't get to slot another player in. So it's almost that kind of situation. So technically, I said, hey, I'm not going to award you the money, but technically, if you wanted to hold your ground, I understand it. And he said, that's not how I'm going to win it. I respect it. I think in our record books, I would give him the title, but anyway, that's the decision that
It's the asterisk championship.
It's an asterisk, yeah. But they both had really stellar seasons. It was going to be very close. When I won my points title last year, my third, by the way, only one to win 3 without an asterisk. I do want to note that. When I won my 2 points title last year, it was a Monday Night Football when Najee Harris had that touchdown against, I believe it was Cleveland or something. And I won the points title by literally like 3 points. And this was shaping up to be another great matchup to decide the points title. It's disappointing it didn't work that way. So my Dynasty League, where I'm also commissioner, I texted the 2 guys today, and they're great friends, so they had already handled this without me even asking. But I said to them, here are your 4 options. We keep the scores as is, and if the players had all gotten injured, which one of them would win, I said they could split the points. I said they could play week 18, just wipe one head. I should probably explain the situation. One head T. Higgins, one head Jamar Chase. Points title is going to be decided by about 10 points. So I said they could wipe out their rosters like in the other matchup, but they said they had already decided on splitting the points money, so they handle it already. So this is going to be really hard for leagues where you don't know who you're playing with. If you're playing on a random league on Sleeper or something, which I know people do off at Twitter, it's up to the league commissioner to make the right decision probably. But I hope you're playing with stand-up guys and girls, stand-up people, and they make the right decision. The right decision probably is to split the money unless it's obviously not a win. If you only had Jamar Chase and you were down 50 points, you probably don't deserve money, but it's up to your league, and hopefully you guys make the right decision. But I just wanted to kind of, at least bring it up, because it did greatly affect the fantasy world. And fantasy is not more important than this young man's life. I want to make that clear. But obviously it is something to talk about. I also want to note, something I was thinking about. I wonder how gambling was handled for this game. I'm sure you got refunds, but I wonder how gambling was handled. I wonder how tickets were handled, because I'm sure there were people who spent $1,000 on a ticket. I'm just curious. I'm wondering how that was handled. So anyway, crappy situation for everybody. Glad he's breathing and alive, and hopefully, all the reports are saying that he making good progress. So, hopefully we see him on the sidelines of a Bills game, whether it's probably not this week, but, hopefully in the playoffs, and Bills are going to win the Super Bowl. I've said it the entire week. Yeah, it's going to happen. Okay. Nick, it seems like you don't have anything more to say. So on to more news. We have some stellar starting quarterbacks for week 18. David Blow is starting versus the San Francisco 49ers for the Cardinals. Sam Ellinger is starting for the Colts after Nick Foles got beat up last week. Sam Howell is starting for the Washington football team after Ron Rivera ultimately cost his team the playoffs by starting Carson Wentz instead of Tyler Heineke last week. Nathan Peterman is starting for the Chicago Bears as Justin Fields dealing with a hip injury and no reason to trot him out there. And I don't have this even in the notes, but Jared Stidham's going to start for the Las Vegas Raiders against the Chiefs. So stellar quarterback play. The Commanders are a mess. This is my first thought. Is the Commanders are on my shit list.
I think I found your least favorite non-division team.
Non what?
Team that's not in your division.
Who?
I think this at Washington.
No. I hate the NFC South more besides America's team, the Jacksonville Jaguars. I hate all of those teams more.
Oh, the AFC South?
I don't like them.
Texans, Colts, Titans?
I don't like the Commanders. I don't like the Raiders because of McDaniels. The Broncos, we got to see what happens, but I didn't really like them either. I don't know.
I feel like making fun of Russ this year.
I did. I did enjoy having
hopped on that bandwagon after you were going to support him.
I do support him. He's right over there. I do support him. It's just funny to make fun of him.
Do you remember, for the people that are newer listeners, just so you know, in season 1, whenever Russ had a bad game, that picture frame that you see in the back used to be turned around and facing the wall. So Russell Wilson,
no, I
couldn't against the wall the whole season.
So when I used to do my own fantasy content, my 2-minute warnings 2 years ago, I had it on my old apartment, like here. Then I turned it around and then I put it in the box because that was the year was Russ for MVP, and then he fell apart. Last year, I I put a piece of paper over his face.
That's right. Yeah.
I think at one point I wrote somebody's name. I think I put Gino over his face or something at one point. It's funny. Anyway, so Nick, any thoughts about this situation? But this is gross. This is week 18. This is why you don't play fantasy football in week 18.
No, I think you said it perfectly. This is why you do not play fantasy football in week 18, and you're going to see a lot of players on the bust list that have a lot to do with these starting quarterbacks.
Also, Marquise Brown is supposed to play with a wrist injury. That's what Cliff Kingsbury said. I don't know why I guess the injury isn't that bad, but I still don't understand why you'd play a player like that you just traded for and signed and without, I don't know. I wouldn't play him. Players that did not practice so far this week as of Thursday night at 7 o'clock Eastern time. Lamar Jackson with a knee injury, Kenneth Walker with an ankle injury, and Tyler Lockett with a leg injury. The Lamar one sticks out to me. Looks like he's just not going to return for the fantasy playoffs. Tyler Lockett's also been really, really consistent. The leg injury is a new one that he suffered against the Jets, so that's a disappointment for Seattle. I think Kenneth Walker's going to suit up, but that's not great for Tyler Lockett. Against a good matchup against the Rams, too. Limited practice. I'm assuming all these guys end up playing. James Conner with a knee, Dawson Knox with a hip, Josh Allen with an elbow, Jerry Jeudy with an ankle, Christian Watson with a hip, Trevor Lawrence with the toe, Josh Jacobs with the hip. And full practice, breakaway speed, Mr. Tony Pollard with the thigh, and Justin Herbert with a shoulder. All right, moving on to the week. Hold on, got to edit the little ticker. For a week 18 all boom team players, we think have the ability to boom in week 18, and you're going to see a very common narrative, which is basically if you're playing for a playoff spot, you're going to play pretty hard. If you're not playing for a playoff spot, I wish you the best of luck. So I think the first one is my guy, right? I have to talk about this guy.
Yes.
I have to say nice things about this guy.
Yes.
I have to say nice things about the guy who was not in my top 12 of fantasy quarterbacks going into the season. And I think I had him busted everywhere. Right now on ESPN, he's a quarterback 15, so pat on the back. Credit to me for calling that shot. Mr. Aaron Rodgers going up against the Detroit Lions defense that allows the most fantasy points to quarterbacks. Also, the Packers control their own destiny. Rodgers is going to find a way to win this game. And I don't think he's going to just find a way. I think he's going to win it, kind of like he did against the Vikings. I think it's going to be a bad game. Lions also allow 25 touchdowns to quarterbacks through, 16 weeks technically. I just don't think it's going to be a close game. I like Dan Campbell. I like the Lions, but this is a bad matchup. They're playing at Lambeau. This is going to be a buzzsaw. The Packers are hot. They've run the table essentially, and they're going to have a date with San Francisco 49ers next week so they could get smacked in the face like they always do.
Yep.
Yeah, but for this week, Aaron Rodgers should have a really good fantasy day. And if he doesn't, then it's everything I said about him throughout the season is entirely true. And I just shouldn't be praising him. But you know what? Play the matchup in this one and play the fact that they have to win on Sunday night. No matter what happens on Sunday, the Packers have to win this football game. On Sunday Night Football. Last game of this season, in the regular season. They have to win it. Nick, who is our first all-boom running back for this week?
So I tried to find a common theme with my all boom guys this week, which was who has a contract incentive, because it's become over the last 2 years a lot more, it goes over well when these guys have like contract incentives and the coaches always push for them. So I picked up a few guys here. All four of my guys have a contract or record breaking incentive. So I picked up these four guys specifically because I think they've had good years, they have good matchups, and they have a chance to break these numbers. So on the opposite side of Aaron Rodgers, I'm going with Jamal Williams. He is one touchdown behind Barry Sanders' single season record. He needs two to pass him. I think he's going to get the one to tie him. Maybe they push for the second one to pass him. But it's not just a fluke, those 15. He has 57 red zone touches this year, which ranks second inside the NFL. He's also going up to the Packers, who are the 11th ranked team against running backs. So not necessarily middle of the pack and a little bit worse than that, just outside the top 10. And the last time that they played, he had 24 rushing attempts in the game. So you're talking about massive volume and a coach that's going to go and try and get one of his locker room leaders, one of his guys, a kind of a revenge game against the Packers.
I was just about to say, don't forget the revenge game.
Yeah, and a chance to go break Barry Sanders, the all-time leading, Lion, probably the greatest Lion ever, break his record, which would be absolutely astounding for that guy. And I love Jamal Williams. I think he's a great dude. So I'm rooting for him this week.
Another revenge game here, kinda, is the Rams going up against the Seahawks is the Bobby Wagner revenge game. And Bobby Wagner's not a running back, but I think this entire Rams team is going to play tough, not just because it's a division game. They've had a lot of battles with the Seahawks, Bobby Wagner. That entire Rams team plays really tough. And that includes Cam Akers facing the Seahawks defense that's allowed the third most fantasy points through running backs through the entirety of the 2022 season. Cam Akers, though, 18 points per game over the last 5. He's possibly your fantasy playoff savior, probably helped you win a championship or could help you win a championship if you're still in it. Last time he faced those Seahawks, 19 fantasy points. This could be a really rough one for the Seahawks defense. And I think Cam Akers is a really good game. I told you to lock him in the last few weeks. Keep locking him in. And speaking of contract years, like this could really, if he has another good game, like he's showing Sean McVay something. I'm sure they'll draft a running back, but he might show Sean McVay, hey, you trusted me 2 years ago. I know we had some, tough times early in the season, but let's go back to that. So, all righty, Nick, who is our first wide receiver boom? This is a guy that I think we both really liked, and I think we just like this offense as a whole going into this week. Well, maybe not as a whole, but at least the air part of the offense, not the ground game.
Yes, and I just want to do one quick thing before I get into this because you said something that reminded me of something I saw in the media this week.
Sure.
So you were just talking about the Rams and I just spoke about the Lions.
Yep.
I do not like Matthew Stafford. I think he's an overrated all-time quarterback. I do not think he's a Hall of Famer, and I think he's going to sneak in there in the second or third ballot. Having said that, he attempted to do one of the most courageous things I think I've seen by an NFL quarterback. He was on the IR. He's been on the IR, season-ending injury. And he told his GM and his coaching staff that he wants to go out there and play this week.
I didn't see that.
Why did he say that? He said before he left the Lions, I will do anything it takes to make sure that this team has success in its future. Wow. And if he beats the Seattle Seahawks, that is the only way the Detroit Lions can get into the playoffs. They beat the Packers and the Seahawks lose to the Rams. So Matthew Stafford did try. The coaching staff said no because of the injury. The doctors did not clear him. But I want to give him a little props there because I heard that and I was like, wow, talk about loyalty to a franchise, maybe not his own and maybe not his own body, but a team that treated him right, he tried to return the favor. Now I will get into why Christian Kirk will be an absolute monster this week in a must-win game for for both teams, but the Jacksonville Jaguars. Tennessee, we've been starting receivers against them all year long. They're the worst team against the wide receiver position, allowing the most points. As I just said, this is a must-win game for Christian Kirk and the Jaguars. And Trevor Lawrence, he's been probably one of the 4 or 5 best quarterbacks in football over the last 6 weeks. During that span, Christian Kirk is still averaging over 6 targets per game, even though he has not been fantastic. And I did talk about the contract incentives. He needs 2 more catches, which he'll definitely do to hit one contract thing. And the second one he needs is 91 receiving yards. If he hits both of those, he gets an extra $1 million payday. So they are going to do what they can to get Christian Kirk to that number. His betting line is actually very high this week. It's higher than it's been all year. I think it's around 75 or 76 yards. So the odds makers are saying Kirk is going to have a good game, and he's going to go try and get that incentive. So I really like the Kirk play this week.
Also, he's the wide receiver 14 on the season, which is excellent. So my first or our second wide receiver all boom player is going to be Christian Watson. I'm keeping the theme here with the Packers. The bad against the quarterbacks probably also means the bad against wide receivers because that's how the quarterbacks are scoring fantasy points. The Lions allow the 4th most fantasy points to wide receivers. The theme of this show is, and the segment has always been picking the receiver against the Lions. They're not going to stop that. Lions have also allowed 14 touchdowns to wide receivers. It's a little less than 1 a game because they played 16 games, but still. It's a lot of touchdowns. Lastly, again, playing for the playoff spot. If Rodgers has a good game, Christian Watson has a good game. They go hand in hand. If Rodgers has a bad game, then Watson probably doesn't have a good game. But I'm going to rely on both of them. I think if you have to wait until Sunday night, the last game of the year, I think that they could win you a fantasy football championship. Who is our first flex boom for week 18?
I'm going with a guy that I hope he does not boom, and I hope he does not do this because I want my guy to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. But Chris Olave still does have a shot at the award. And right now he needs 155 yards to set the rookie team record for most receiving yards in a season. And if he puts up a stat line like that, that's going to give him Offensive Rookie of the Year. I think the coaching staff's going to go and try and force the ball his way, especially going up against the Panthers, who have the ranked 30th secondary across the entire season. And the first time that Olave, it's a common theme in all these matchups because it's all division matchups this week. The last time Chris Olave did play Carolina, although it was earlier in the year, he put up 147 receiving yards. So I do think he has a lot of upside to catch a lot of balls for a lot of yards this week. Finding the end zone has not been easy for him this year, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's able to do that against this depleted secondary as well.
All right. My guy I picked here for the flex spot is Najee Harris, who's quietly been pretty solid. In his last 7 games, he's at over double-digit fantasy points. In his last 3, over 14 fantasy points, including 20 fantasy points last week against the Baltimore Ravens defense. And I think his draft position next year is going to be really interesting because the offense has not scored a lot of points this year. And I think that's kind of limited him. He's also been dealing with injuries since week 1. I'm sure he does have some kind of surgery and a lot of rest in the offseason. But I think next year could be a better year for Najee Harris than his year 2 for sure. And he's still the running back 16 right now. So not terrible, just not the running back 5 or 6 where you drafted him. But with that said, he's facing the Cleveland Browns, who have allowed the 6th most fantasy points to running backs. And the Cleveland Browns still have, the Pittsburgh Steelers still have a chance at a playoff spot. So I think a couple things have to go right for them, but I believe they're playing at 1 o'clock. So there's no reason for them to bench their starters or to not play their hearts out. And with Mike Tomlin coaching them, I think they would play tough no matter what. So with that said, Najee Harris should be a pretty good play this week. And I think he gets into the end zone and gets to a really nice stat line. Nick, who is going to be our tight end boom for Week 18?
We are going with Gerald Everett. He is going up against the Denver Broncos, who allow the 6th most points to the tight end position. I talked about contract incentives. Well, Everett needs 5 catches to get his contract bonus. He's done this in over 50% of his games this year, so it's not unachievable. And the Broncos allow the 9th most catches to the tight end position. So I think you could lock him in for 5 catches easily, and 5 catches to a tight end is a lot more points than it is to a wide receiver or a running back. So I think Everett is definitely a good slot in here, and when he's got a favorable matchup too, I think it's a perfect combination of somebody that deserves to be started.
Okay. Moving on now, we're going to go to the Week 18 all-bust team, and I can just tell you right now, like Commanders, Colts, Cardinals, any team that's playing with one of those quarterbacks is just somebody that I would avoid. But anyway, Week 18 all-bust team. I'm going to start things off here with our quarterback, and here's the thing. I'm starting off with a quarterback that may have won you a fantasy championship last week, a quarterback that was probably underdrafted, a quarterback was a 7th-ranked quarterback at the end of the season. I'm talking about Daniel Jones here. 2 of his 3 playoff games, he had over 20 fantasy points. Not the one against Washington, so you might have gotten bounced around one if you started him, but the weeks against Minnesota and Indianapolis, over 20 fantasy points. So why would you bench him now? Well, I'm going to tell you, the Eagles are a top 5 team against quarterbacks when it comes to fantasy points. The last time that they played the Eagles, Daniel Jones had less than 200 all-purpose yards. He had a rushing touchdown to save his week, but aside from that, not a great game, and you can't really bank on a rushing touchdown from a quarterback. There's also a good shot that they bench him at half since the playoff seed is kind of locked. I believe if the Giant seed is locked no matter what.
Yeah.
I can't see Dable benching his starters for the entire game, but depending on the score of the game, you might get benched halfway through. The Eagles are playing for the 1 seed, so the Eagles, need to win this game to get the 1 seed. But as for the Giants, you don't want Daniel Jones to get injured at all. So I don't think it's smart to bench players because, we saw what happened with the Ravens a couple of years ago. They benched players and they got smashed by the Titans. But some of these players, I don't think they're going to get a lot of reps out of. So I think it's possible for Daniel Jones. I also saw a New York Post report that said players could be benched, by the way. I don't even have that in the notes. But all right, who is your first running back bust for our team this week?
We are going with Travis Etienne. We love Christian Kirk against the secondary, but we have faded running backs against that front 7. The Tennessee Titans are the 2nd best team against running backs this year. And as I said, we already have the proof of concept. We've already seen all the teams that are facing this week face each other, so we know what they did the first time, which is a little bit of a help to us. Well, a lot of bit of a help to us. And the last time that they played, Travis Etienne had an astonishing 17 carries for 32 yards. That is less than 2 yards per carry. And he also received 0 targets that game, giving him a whopping 3.2 points. If you need to win a fantasy championship, Etienne is not the guy to play.
And just to be clear, I'm very happy with Etienne's production. I drafted him in, I think, 2 or 3 leagues this year, and I'll be drafting him again next year. But the Tennessee defense is no joke when it comes to running backs. Everything else, they are a bit of a joke. Okay, my first running back bust is going to be James Conner. And James Conner is another one that's been really, really productive as of late. So I just want to talk about this because I don't think he's being talked about enough on a team that hasn't gotten a lot of points. You know, he's averaging 15 fantasy points, which isn't bad at all on the season at all. Since he came back from his injury in week 8, so this is week 9 on, he's had double digits in every single game since. He's had over 15 fantasy points. So this is, again, in 8 games here. He had over 15 fantasy points in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In 5 out of those 8, over 14 in 6 out of those 8. So been very, very productive. But he's going up against the San Francisco 49ers defense. Last time he faced that defense, only 13 fantasy points. He had a touchdown to save his day. Take away that touchdown, 7 fantasy points. Touchdown's not guaranteed. He's also playing now with a 4th-string quarterback, I think, because they're not playing McSorley. They're not playing Colt McCoy. Kyler Murray's out. They're playing David Blow. So I think it's technically a 4th-string quarterback. In his game last week with David Blow, he had 14 fantasy points. Not bad. He's going up against the Falcons defense, so an easier defense. Now he's going up against the San Francisco 49ers, the best defense in the NFL. From a fantasy standpoint, the number 1 team against running backs. They are also playing for the 1 seed. The Eagles are playing at 4 o'clock. The 49ers are playing at 4 o'clock. They could scoreboard watch, but they have to go into this game with the mindset where they have to win. Deebo Samuel is playing. And I don't think I put that in the notes. I probably should have, but Deebo's practicing, and I think he's going to play. So, like, the 49ers are going all in this week. If they go up a lot of points, you know, maybe they pull some of those defensive starters, but I don't think there's a lot of hope for James Conner this week. So if you got to bench him, I would bench him. Nick, who is our first wide receiver bust this week?
I am going with Michael Pittman. The Tennessee, the Colts, my apologies, are going up against the Houston Texans.
I need the Colts to win this week. I'm so screwed.
The Texans are a top 5 team against the wide receiver position. As crazy as it sounds, that's what they've managed to pull off this year, and it's because they've been so bad to running backs that they have not needed to, you know, like other teams have not needed to throw the ball to their wide receivers. On top of that, Pittman has horrendous quarterback play. Sam Ehlinger is going to start. This is the 3rd or 4th different starting quarterback for the Colts this year.
I think it's technically the 3rd, but it's the 4th quarterback change.
Yeah. So both of his starts, he had 2 starts earlier this season. Michael Pittman averaged under 10 points per game in both of those. So you have a bad matchup. You have the proof that he was bad with this quarterback in his 2 games. Pittman's best year of the season was actually week 1 against the Texans. So it's very possible he goes and cooks them again. But I'm going to bet on the other side of it. I think 4 months is a lot has changed about this Colts team.
You know, Jalen Waddle, he should have been on our bust team last week. I kind of spoke about it on our live show, and he wasn't, but I'm definitely putting him on the bust team this week. And he's been very, very good this season, but the issue is he's not good when he's not playing with Tua. Last time Waddle went up against these New York Jets, and the New York Jets are the 2nd best team against wide receivers. They surrendered the 2nd least amount of fantasy points to fantasy wide receivers. Last time he went up against this secondary, he only had 5.3 fantasy points with the backup quarterback. I think Bridgewater got injured early in that game, and then they had to play what was his
Skylar
name?
Thompson.
Skylar Thompson. And here's the thing, Teddy Bridgewater's not 100% playing this week, and I don't think Tua is either, so he may have Skylar Thompson again. But knowing that Tua is probably not going to be his quarterback is enough for me to bench him. But I'll talk about a couple other things. Nick wrote here in a note that all his single-digit games have come in games where Tua was either hurt or a backup quarterback was in. Last week when I told players to bench him in their championship, he only scored 8.2 fantasy points. And a really good note here from Nick that the Dolphins have the 31st ranked pass rush offensive line, meaning they're not good against the pass rush. And the Jets, which lead to quick throws, they're only averaging 4.1 yards per pass on a quick throw. And yeah, it's not a good situation for Waddle. I don't see him breaking off an 80-yard touchdown. He could, but I don't see it happening. So I think he's a bench candidate, not just a bust candidate, but a bench candidate for this week. Tyreek Hill, you still play the talent, but Waddle, as talented as I think he is, I don't think he's enough to overcome Skylar Thompson. So moving on, who is our first bust flex spot here?
We are going with Brian Robinson. he has a phenomenal story, and that's really all I think his NFL career has been. It's been one story, and I hate to bash him because I don't want to say he's playing bad and like he was injured, so maybe he hasn't fully recovered. Like that's most likely the case.
I
But
think
he's
it's
still
coaching. I think that coach is horrible.
well, coach
Can't
is bad too. Don't get me wrong, but Brian Robinson has not been good for football this year. Since the bye week, he only has 3 targets. He has 1 game over 10 since then. He's had sub 10 in the last 2 weeks. He's only averaging 3.2 yards per carry in that span. He's been really bad. And now he's going up against the Dallas Cowboys, who have the second best team against the running back position. On top of that, last week, and what was a positive matchup with a good game script, in his first game without Heineke, he only scored 8 points, and now Washington's going to go roll out Sam Howell, another quarterback for him, another combination for a rookie running back. It does not seem like a good fit. I think they're going to get absolutely slaughtered. They're not going to need to run the ball. They're going to have to pass the ball, and Brian Robinson doesn't have the target share to prove that he's going to be the receiving back either. So I think he's a full avoid this week. I don't think there's any reason that you should play him unless if all your other running backs are getting benched this week.
Okay. For me, I have Mike Williams. My first note here is that he could be benched or not even play because they will know the result of the Ravens game. I think if the Ravens lose to the Bengals, which they probably will, the Chargers can move up a seed with a win. So that would give Mike Williams something to play for. But if the Ravens somehow beat the Bengals, I think the Ravens lock up the, is it 5 seed? I think it's the 5 seed they would lock up. And then Mike Williams would not have much to play for. And going up against a tough Denver defense on top of that, they surrendered the fewest fantasy points to wide receivers. The last time Mike Williams played the Denver Broncos, I think it was week 9, he had 3.7 fantasy points. So I don't see him having a good game no matter what seed they're playing for. I think the Chargers will win this game, but Denver's been playing tough the last few weeks, so Denver could put up a fight as well. My point being, though, Mike Williams, I don't know if he's a bench candidate, but I think he's a bust candidate for sure. Lastly, Nick, our all-bust tight end. I see your point here, Nick, but I'm intrigued at this one.
I'm going with TJ Hawkinson, and I'm not saying bench him because it's impossible to bench a tight end with this much workload, with this much target share up to this point or since the trade deadline. And I think Hawkinson has solidified himself as the second tight end off the board next year. No doubt in my mind. But he's going up against the Chicago Bears. Does not sound intimidating at first, but Chicago only allows 7.5 points per game to the tight end position, and it's a top 6 in the leagues. So it's a tough matchup. So I'm tempering my expectations a little bit. I do think Justin Jefferson and those receivers are going to have to get back on track as well. So I do think Kirk is going to force the ball a little bit more to those outside guys versus inside the middle to Hawk. I think it could be overall a poorer game. They also have their playoff spot locked up. I don't think they can move up the standings at all anymore. So there's a very good shot if they're absolutely blowing out Chicago without Justin Fields at halftime that Hawkinson and the rest of the starters get pulled for the game. So
I think
not
that the
benching him,
Vikings
but tempering the expectations.
I think the Vikings should bench the starters so my Bears can win this game. Just saying.
What's your bet on them? On Chicago, you have Chicago and Texans?
Yeah, I need Chicago to have a better winning percentage or whatever than the Texans. And it's not going to happen because the stupid Texans tie. It's bullshit. They're going to have the same number of wins, and I'm going to owe $50 because that stupid freaking tie week 1.
Wait, that's only if
the Texans are going to beat the Colts.
Oh, okay. I see.
Yeah, I'm screwed. I'm screwed because of that. Yeah, okay. Exactly. I'm screwed.
I was going to say. Alrighty.
Yeah. Yep. Interesting. But if the Bengals
that would make the NFL so interesting, though. Chicago trades the number 1 pick or trades Fields because he's been hurt. Drafts CJ Stroud number 1. Very interesting. Very interesting. What could happen?
Ugh. All right. Let's end the show with flex on. I'm going to choose between 2 players here, one from each side of the ball, and tell you who you'd rather play in the Week 18 matchup. So, Juju Smith-Schuster or Darren Waller?
I will roll out Darren Waller in this matchup.
I'll roll out Juju for the upside. I know you kind of mentioned last week, you'd rather have Juju score 20 in your lineup, then 20 on your bench, I will roll out Juju. I'm not believing in Jared Stidham. I'm sorry. I know what we saw last week.
Beast.
I think it's an anomaly. I don't think it happens again. I could be wrong, but we'll see. Okay, moving on. I'm cutting this. I'm just not doing it.
Okay.
You know what? I'm going to change my mind. How about I'm trying to think of 2 Jaguars maybe, because the Titans have nobody, right? Like, I don't know. I don't have a good one for this. Zay Jones or player X?
I'm going to go with Zay Jones.
I'll go with Zay Jones as well. Leonard Fournette or Tyler Algier?
I'm going to go playoff Lenny. I think he's been a lot better than people have given him credit for more recently.
I think he has been, but Algier now has 3 straight weeks over 15 fantasy points. And in that span, he also has 2 touchdowns. He has over 70 yards in all 3 of those games. The Bucs have a tough run defense, but the Falcons are playing pretty tough. And the Bucs aren't benching their starters to start the game, but they have no reason to play their starters in the second half. Zero.
I don't know
reason.
why they don't bench Brady.
I just think they don't want it to be rusty. That's my only thought. But
it's got to be Brady's making the call. So I guess Brady's
play him for a drive or 2 like it's the preseason at that point. That's what I would do at least.
I would give him the week. I don't think he needs it, but you're going to have the Cowboys or the Eagles who are going to be playing competitive football week 1 or the first playoff game, and they're going to be playing physical. If you are well rested, you are going to blow them out in the first and second quarter.
I guess. I don't know. It's a really interesting conversation to have, because I feel like everybody goes back to the Ravens game where they just let Derrick Henry drop like 400 yards on them or something like that. They got embarrassed. They rested their starters. I think that really changed things. So I don't know. Ramondre Stevenson or Gabriel Davis?
I will go with Stevenson. I know he's had a couple dud weeks, but he's the better running. He's been way too consistent this year for me to doubt him because of a couple off weeks.
I'm going to take Gabriel Davis here. The Bills have been really tough against running backs. Gabriel Davis, he has a lot of upside to him.
I don't know. New England's got one of the best secondaries in football.
Do they? I feel like they don't anymore.
They're definitely in the top 5 or just outside the top 5. I want to know what Gabe Davis did last time they met. I'm curious.
Let's find out. Probably wasn't great. Let's find out. Are my eyes deceiving me? Why can I not? Oh, he had 9.5 with a touchdown. Listen, Stevenson's been a bit of a bust lately, and I don't know if you can really trust him. If you made it to your championship with Stevenson in your lineup for 2 or 3 weeks, I don't know. I think it's tough to trust.
Fair enough.
Okay. I thought this was a different game. Dalvin Cook or David Montgomery?
Dalvin Cook.
Dalvin Cook. You shouldn't even start a Bear this week. They're going to get embarrassed.
Correct.
J.K. Dobbins or Joe Mixon?
I will go with Joe Mixon.
I'll start Joe Mixon. I love the Bengals, but they're bad for the segment because all their guys are too good to be in flex spots. Okay.
Next game of the week.
This is my game of the week. The Texans and the Colts, and I just wrote this game sucks. I don't want to play anybody from this game, so I'm tapping out of this segment. I'm just not.
You're voiding this one as well.
I'm voiding. Okay. I'm not playing a Colt or a Texan, and I don't think you want to play a Colt or a Texan.
I would not play. I would play whoever the running back is for the Colts.
I won't because I don't know who's going to get the football. I don't know if they're going to score. I refuse to play.
I think it's going to be like a Deontay Foreman and Chuba Hubbard situation where they both go for double digits, the running backs.
Oh, I hope so. I hope so. I'll have my Colts jersey ready to go. Zonovan Knight or Raheem Mostert?
I will go with Zonovan Knight.
I will also go with Zonovan Knight. Did you see the comment about James Robinson earlier, though?
No.
LaFleur said that James Robinson's going to be a big part of the offense in 2023 or something like that.
Good.
They should play him then. Maybe it should be James Robinson then.
No, I'll still start Bam.
Nothing against your Jets, but it's just like I don't understand how they do their running back room at the moment. It's confusing to me.
But they still run the ball well.
They do run the ball well. Maybe it's because they have a bunch of different runners.
This year they're going to have Breece Hall, Michael Carter, Zonovan Knight, and James Robinson on the roster.
And I can't
wait.
What
the hell do they do?
I can't wait to fade Breece Hall in fantasy drafts.
Again?
Yep, again. I'm not touching it. I don't draft Jets. I'm going back to my rule. Don't touch them.
I'm taking Garrett Wilson next year. I can guarantee you that.
Who's his quarterback?
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. It does matter because what has Garrett Wilson done the last 4 weeks?
I will take a look for the stats for you.
Yeah, we're going to take a look because a quarterback, it does matter. Garrett Wilson's last 2 weeks are under 5 points. The 2 weeks before that were 13 and 13, which is an okay flex play.
Don't forget the week before that. Don't forget the 24. You said last 5 games. Don't forget that one.
He had the 24. Who was his quarterback? Was that Mike White?
That was Mike White.
The Mike White experiment is over. I'm sorry to break it to you.
You're not wrong. I mean, he had Jacksonville. He had Zach Wilson, who we knew sucked. And Seattle, he had Mike White, and Seattle secondary's been pretty good this year. So
they've been okay.
Hey, guess what? He hasn't had less than 7 targets in 6 weeks.
You're right. It's an Allen Robinson situation. That's what it is.
More talented Allen Robinson.
I don't know. You loved Allen Robinson.
I loved him, but I love Garrett Wilson more. He's wearing green.
Well, you're right. Okay. Point being, if the Jets have Derek Carr, I will bump Garrett Wilson up to like the 4th round. If they throw like Mike White out there, he's not touching any of my fantasy teams. I think that's a very.
I respect that.
DJ Moore or Chris Olave?
I'll take Chris Olave here.
I'll take him too, but DJ Moore
is just about a guy that's had a season resurgence, man. DJ Moore. He was terrible through like 8 or 9 weeks, and he flipped the script after they cut Baker.
He's another one. I don't know what to do with him.
He's on the do not fly list for me, though.
He's like, I don't know what to do with him. I don't know. I don't draft him. I mean, this is the reason I don't draft him. By the way, he finished the season as a wide receiver 23. Hilarious. All right. Amari Cooper or Najee Harris?
I'm gonna go with. I would take Najee here.
I'll take Najee. I'll take Najee as well.
A lot more love though.
I don't think Cooper has a bad game.
Yeah. Keenan Allen.
I'm like, why am I blanking? Keenan Allen or Jerry Jeudy?
I will go with Keenan Allen, but I think Jeudy is another solid play.
I'm going with Jerry Jeudy because Russ is gonna cook.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Russ is gonna cook, baby. No Nathaniel.
I'll put some dew on Russ cooking this week.
Oh boy, he's cooked. He's cooked the last few weeks.
Yeah.
Kinda.
Still hasn't won a game, but that's cool.
Listen, he's not winning games from fantasy perspective. If you play, if you played Russ in your fantasy championship last week, you might have won. You had 23 fantasy points. Okay. Darius Slayton or Devontae Smith?
Devontae Smith, easy.
I can't wait to do like a recap. We'll do a couple weeks of recap almost, but Devontae Smith was one of my big sleeper guys. I want to see what I labeled his as. I'm going to the Instagram. I want to see what we labeled him as because I need to scroll.
I think you didn't have him in the top 24 though.
I didn't. You're right. I didn't, but I did have him as like my breakout and my sleeper or something. I just want to see what I labeled him as.
You want to know who did finish in the top 24 though?
Who?
Mr. Garrett Wilson.
See?
Surprise.
You didn't have him up there though.
None of us did.
I had Devontae Smith.
More.
I had Devontae Smith in my go get him, which is when we did one player per round. I had him at round 8. I said go get him, and we didn't post a graphic. Oh god damn it! All right,
top 5 offenses.
No, I was looking for the graphic where we kind of did like I think we did like our sleeper. It was our second episode. We called it our fantasy preseason awards. I don't know. I labeled them as a breakout or something like that. Anyway, point being, credit to me. Devontae Smith is a wide receiver 9 on the season, and he's definitely going to outscore any giant that steps foot on that football field.
Fair enough.
I might take Devontae Smith to outscore the entire wide receiver room
of the
Giants.
I mean, that's definitely
at least 2 of them. The starting 2. All right. Cam Akers or Kenneth Walker?
I will go with Cam Akers.
I'll go with Akers too. Kenneth Walker's going to be running into Bobby Wagner all day.
Yep.
Hollywood Brown or Brandon Ayuk?
I am going to go with Brandon Ayuk in this one.
Now, here's the thing. I would have gone with Ayuk, but now it seems like Debo is going to play. And listen, the 49ers are going to have to play in round 1 unless something miraculous happens. I don't think they just want to put Debo out there, next week, not without getting his feet wet. I think they feed him a little bit. Marquise Brown had 12 fantasy points last week on 9 targets. And the 49ers defense is good against everything except for wide receivers. They allowed the 6th most fantasy points to wide receivers. So I'm going to go with Hollywood Brown here.
Okay.
Tony Pollard or Brian Robinson. But listen, I don't think any commander should be played. And if I'm Terry McLaurin, I am demanding a trade on Monday. I don't want to be on the organization. I think listen, super talented, but I don't know why you'd want to be there. I don't know. Jamal Williams or AJ Dillon on Sunday Night Football?
I will go with Jamal Williams.
I will too. Aaron Jones kind of assumed the running back one role last week. So, alrighty, guys. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed it and you're listening on an audio streaming platform, iTunes, Spotify, give us a 5-star rating and a review. We'd appreciate that. If you're watching on YouTube, please drop a like on this video. We appreciate that as well. I'll have the live show running on Sunday. I'm going to make it 9 o'clock, so I don't have to wake up early. So we're going to do 9 o'clock. I'm giving myself an extra half hour of sleep. Anybody that wants to tune in, going to be 9 o'clock. I'll answer as many fantasy questions as you guys give me. I'll run through each game, and when that's it, I will call it a day and hopefully win your Week 18 championships. But hopefully you already won your championships because you shouldn't be a psycho playing in Week 18. I'm going to stick to that take. That's going to be one of my rules for next year. Don't play in leagues that go to Week 18. That sounds miserable to me. All right. Thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you for supporting. Talk to you guys soon. Best of luck in Week 18 if you're playing. And if you're not playing, enjoy some football and have a great weekend.